We also have a lot of concerns with leadership in the RCMP that I asked the Minister today if this bill would provide any oversight to the RCMP Commissioner, given the recent scandal and accusations with corroborating evidence that the RCMP Commissioner politically interfered into the worst mass killing in Canadian history, notably the Nova Scotia 2020 mass killing. And so this is a very serious matter that the Conservatives, together with the Bloc and the NDP, have been investigating for 5 months. I'm not convinced that this bill, although it will improve the oversight of the RCMP, Madam Speaker, I don't think that that translates to the top leadership in the RCMP, unfortunately, though it is desperately needed. In committee just the other day, we were talking to the Commissioner of the RCMP. Now, it's the second time she came to committee about this same interference scandal. She also went to the Mass Casualty Commission to discuss this as well. And it was quite a challenging experience. I was hoping for some sentiment that she was remorseful, that she'd handled the situation the way that she did, just any sort of legitimate explanation that we could understand that would provide us some relief that she didn't do this, but unfortunately we didn't get any of that. And again, this is our only ability to hold her accountable is through the Public Safety Committee. At least as an opposition, the government, of course, could fire the commissioner, but they have not taken those steps. So we believe that they should. But again, Bill C-20, we're talking about oversight, and yet there's no oversight mechanism in here that I'm aware of for the RCMP commissioner in this circumstance. So just to recap, the Commissioner a few years ago, during the heat of the fallout, about 10 days into the tragedy that took 22 lives, including the life of a pregnant woman, we have found out through the evidence that we've built and through the MCC that the Commissioner first and foremost warned the government that sharing the weapons information of the evil killer in that situation that killed, again, 22 people plus a pregnant woman, that sharing that information would jeopardize the criminal investigation. She made that very clear, that it should not be shared beyond the Minister and the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, a few days later, she turned around, and we now have an audio recording where she was reprimanding her Nova Scotia deputies on the ground. She reprimanded them for not sharing the very information that she warned her bosses not to share. We've asked her, the MCC has asked her, what changed your mind? She has not provided a single coherent answer of what changed her mind. We have theories, but she has not provided a single coherent response. What we have found out in the audio recording, and that was certainly corroborated before we got that audio recording by the Nova Scotia deputies and their meticulous notes, that the Commissioner was connecting the Liberal forthcoming gun control policies in that the reason that she did this was because she wanted to help usher along the Liberal government's gun control policies. And so when you have a commissioner of the RCMP that has 22 murdered Canadians and the largest criminal investigation in Canadian history in that regard, looking at this as an opportunity to further her political boss's gun control policy, we obviously have a lot of questions and concerns about that. We believe that that is political interference, and what really tied it back to the Liberal government was her own words saying that they requested that she do this, Madam Speaker. They've repeatedly denied this. We have her words in an audio recording. We have that corroborated with the Nova Scotia deputies who were in that meeting where she stated those things. They've written notes. They've testified at committee. They, without a doubt, in their minds, and given the audio, we can see where they're coming from. The commissioner of our RCMP looked to take advantage of the deaths of 22 people to further the Liberal political agenda, Madam Speaker. And she also said that that was requested by the then Minister of Public Safety's office. So we have gone through this for 5 months. The evidence has trickled out, building the case. To us, it seems irrefutable that this happened. And yet she still has her position. We find that disgusting and appalling. We don't understand how someone could come to committee, the head of our law enforcement, and just kind of worm her way around the facts on the ground, the audio recording that we have, that she directly connects these things. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And yet she said things like, oh, that was just a conversation. That's taken out of context. This is all a misunderstanding. It was just a miscommunication. That's what we were hearing. And yet we have the audio recording. We have the testimony from the people who are in the room. And so it's quite frustrating that the most powerful RCMP officer in the country, we weren't able to fully hold her accountable. Perhaps that's a shortcoming of my own. Perhaps I could have done a better job. However, I do feel that if we're going to talk about Bill C-20, the government also needs to talk about holding the RCMP commissioner accountable, which they've so far failed to do. And it's one thing if it was just in this scenario that she was using that kind of slippery language to make excuses for her behavior that was, as we believe, was on the order of the Liberal government and their ministers. She also mentioned the PMO in that audio, so perhaps it goes as far as the Prime Minister's office, so we were unable to get any further evidence to convince media and others that that is the case. But should any more evidence come up, rest assured we will be revisiting that issue, Madam Speaker. But what I would say, I think the reporters are finally experiencing a bit of what we experienced with the Commissioner over the past 5 months. Recently, Madam Speaker, again, we're talking oversight of the RCMP. Recently, a Globe and Mail story just came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Of course, we're talking about the Emergencies Act. And now it seems that the ministers or the Commissioner is pulling the same sort of behavior with the Emergencies Act. So she apparently was texting with her counterpart at the OPP Commissioner. This was back in the height of the convoy when the government invoked the Emergencies Act. And again, just as a refresher, the Emergencies Act allows the government to supersede charter rights. Very big deal. That's why there's a built-in inquiry to hold the government accountable for doing that, to ensure the very high threshold of the Emergencies Act was met. So we're going through that process right now. It's quite riveting. Though what I would say, the Commissioner is sort of pulling the same stuff with the media, because there are text messages between her and the OPP where, and I'll just read the title of the article, Top Mountie Can't Explain Text Messages in which she suggested federal government wanted retroactive support for Emergencies Act. Where's the oversight on this, Madam Speaker? She said this to the OPP Commissioner. It's unbelievable. Has Minister Blair hit you up for a letter to support the EA? Again, my understanding from the article is that this is after the Emergencies Act was invoked by the Liberals. So we have the head of the RCMP, the Commissioner of the RCMP, asking for a retroactive support letter for the invocation of the Emergencies Act from the OPP Commissioner. Two very powerful people talking about backdating a letter, retroactive, to show that, oh no, we're supporting this, we're supporting this. I think that's pretty peculiar, pretty suspect about the integrity there, Madam Speaker, and how desperate perhaps, now this is speculation, how desperate perhaps the political bosses in that scenario were to build their case. And we know that the Minister of Public Safety said mistruths in this House when he said that the police asked for the emergency powers when in fact they did not. So just building on that narrative a little bit more. Further than that, she told reporters she never requested such a letter, and yet we have texts that say that she did. How can you have texts that say she requested this letter and then she tells reporters, no, I didn't? This is what we've been through for 5 months with this Commissioner. We say, you said this. She said, no, not really. That's not what that meant. Over and over and over again. So we're talking about RCMP oversight. Where's the oversight for the RCMP Commissioner, Madam Speaker? And further, she said, and I'll just conclude with this because this is the part that shocked me the most. She was texting, again, our top RCMP, the Commissioner, texting the top of the OPP. Commissioner Lucky's texts show that she twice asked Commissioner Carrick, the OPP Commissioner, about using a different messaging app that she does not quote, store deleted messages. Store deleted in the context of talking about the emergency powers. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My concluding moment or minute. Isn't it peculiar to anyone that the head of our RCMP is texting the head of the OPP about the emergency powers, saying we need to use an app where our messages can be permanently deleted? Is no one concerned about that, Madam Speaker? The head of our law and order are talking about we need to use an app to permanently delete records? I mean, that is insane to me, Madam Speaker, and it is unbelievable that the Commissioner is still the head of law and order in this country, Madam Speaker. I think it is appalling. She should absolutely resign, or better yet, be fired by the Public Safety Minister. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
I spent the better part of the last 20 minutes listening to my colleague's intervention, hoping that we would have heard more about the substance of the bill itself, and I will come back to my question for my colleague across the aisle. But look, I'll be the first person to stand up in this House and defend the incredible work that is done by law enforcement every day when it comes to keeping public safety across the community, and the